Pleiadians came to birth humanity. Peer-reviewed science they have discovered 200,000 years ago, the humanoids developing on the Earth went from a 24-pair chromosome humanoid to one Homo sapiens that contains 23 chromosomes. And when this took place, it gave us an enlarged brain. It gave us capacity for memory learning, emotion, empathy, compassion. That did not exist before this time.
The planet has evolved in consciousness very little, and it's the kind of consciousness that you look back in history that's responsible for all of the things that we see everywhere even today. Kryon came in 1989 to tell us that the shift would occur, that this shift would happen in the years of the 2000s. And if you look at it, this then corresponds to, you mentioned it, revelation.
Monika, Lee, Kryon, wherever you are in whatever dimension, welcome back on Just Happen. What are you both most excited about right now in your life?
I'm most excited about my joy factor increasing, and it's something that I have been consciously working on, where I will deliberately seek out funny videos that make me laugh hysterically, and often they involve dogs, children, pandas, and things that just make me fall down laughing. And I find that as I'm laughing more, my whole mood for the whole day is elevated. And any old patterns I had of complaining about stuff, how can you complain about stuff when you're busy laughing? You can't have complaining and laughing at the same time. So I think that's what I'm personally excited about the most. How about you, Lee?
I get excited about watching her get excited.
It's reciprocal.
She has hit a chord here that is very metaphysical, and we teach it and all, and that is getting out of the stress and the problems that you're seeing that may bother you in the world or the country or whatever is what we teach. And you can do this so easily through joy. And I think so many of you have had a situation where maybe it's stressful and somebody breaks the ice or somebody laughs or whatever, and then everything relaxes and you go into a state where you think clearly. Brian says you'll even live longer. So we are into having fun, making sure that we have the joy factor intact, because we're always facing a situation where we have to explain the world to people who are not in joy and are having a lot of trouble and in anxiety and in fear because things are different now.
And joy is a vibration, isn't it? And I was hearing from Dr. Joe Dispenza, I was just at his retreat, that when there's a change in our vibration, there's a change in our timeline. And I know you guys have been getting into, and Kryon has been teaching a lot about the multidimensionality, the nature of the multidimensional self that we are. So how does our vibration affect the timeline that we go into, not only individually, but also collectively as a whole?
It's an extremely complex question, as you already know, and even the question doesn't reveal. Let me say it leads to multiple answers. And when you ask me this, I would have to start at the beginning. And that is to say, are you talking about the multidimensionality of our cellular structure, which it is? Are you talking about the multidimensionality of our consciousness, which is starting to change? And perhaps, or you're asking about the confusing part of being in the now. Now, that is probably where you're going with this. And that is suddenly we have something that allows us to affect everything that is in the past, in the now, the present, and the future. And this is physics 101. The scientists who are studying quantum level things have always looked at this in a very scientific way And they have a word that I want to give you today, and it's called retrocausality. And when you start looking at that, it's a mind bender. We're not even talking about a time change on your future yet. What if you could go into a place, if you want to call it that, which represents a multidimensional soul, that's yours, and let's say you're not in 3D anymore. Let's say you're in this soup that we call multidimensionality, where there is no linearity, there's no time, and everything happens at once, past, present, and future. If you were there, let's say, almost magically, and you started looking at, can I change the past? Let's not even get to the future yet. Would that change your timeline today? Yes, it would. Is it possible? Physicists say yes, it's called retrocausality. What you do now changes what happened. Now, don't ask me how this works, because Kryon has repeatedly said you won't understand it. It's not in your reality. You're linear. Everything, every second that goes by, it's counted as a second, and you're on a train track. You have no idea how this works. But then he said, you have trouble looking at the future and your timeline and saying you can change it because it hasn't happened yet, and you have free choice to change it. Therefore, how can this be? And this is where I'll just give you a little thing that Kryon has said. Imagine you can go not into your future, but let's say you could send out drones, if you want to, that are yours, to make it so that when you get to the place, you don't know where you're going, it's going to be a smoother road. So you're sending out benevolent packages for you, so when you get to a place, you'll have them. That's the best way I could ever say and explain how what you do today changes your timeline. This timeline means if, for instance, you go into the future and people are saying, you don't know what's going to happen. You could have an accident tomorrow. And so, how are you going to change that? Because that could change the timeline of your life. It could kill you, maybe. What if you were able to send benevolent packages of your wisdom out so that when you get there, that won't happen? That's the best I can do to explain the power we have in this multidimensional oneness of now that we are starting to approach really, truly with consciousness. And the thing that I love the most is that physicists are studying it too. So this is not some metaphysical journey that everybody's supposed to hum through, if you know what I mean. So this is real stuff. And we are starting to actually see it in certain parts of our lives when we're looking at intuitive things that are happening and realizing not a deja vu where we've been here before, but we expected it. So here comes an issue, and we don't know what's going to happen, but we sail right through it because we've expected some kind of benevolence, and we feel like it's us. That's the best I can give you to something extremely complex.
Beautiful. I would love to also hand it over to Monika if you have any perceptions on time and how that works.
I love exploring this topic, and in a more simple, basic term, I want to present something that everyone will relate to regarding the subject of time. Have you ever had a situation where it's unpleasant and you're waiting for an outcome or that situation to be resolved, and every day you are focusing on that situation and when the resolution will come? For many of us, this example could have been in COVID, when we were, my goodness, we have all these restrictions, all these mandates that are coming down, and we are waiting for when that will be released. And we get so focused, and it's uncomfortable. And we get really locked into that 3D timeline, very linear. Now, Kryon has said, once you get beyond 4 dimensions, you become multi-dimensional. It's It's a very hard concept for us to understand. But here's where I can bring it to you so that you can really understand things that come from the other side of the veil are music, joy, laughter, and that unconditional love and compassion. So now think about a situation where you are hearing your favorite piece of music, or you are with friends you haven't seen for such a long time, and there is so much joy and laughter and conversation going, and you've been immersed in that experience. And then when it ends, you look at the time, and it could have been 4 hours that have gone by, and it felt like 5 minutes. This is an example of how timelines can seem to shift and bend, even though on the linear clock there was a passage of time. Your felt perception of that in the different circumstances were different and varied. And when you were saying that when we are in a vibration that changes and gets higher, I think is what you said, Emilio, is we start changing the timelines. But as Lee just mentioned a moment ago, when we step into the energy of our soul, which is infinite, no beginning and no end, we are in a place that is everywhere all at once, filled with potentials. And so when we're in that space, we can have what Lee said, the retrocausality, where you have this aha moment of thinking about a past event and seeing it with a new perspective. Instead of you being a victim, you see it as a different perspective, that this was an opportunity where you could open a door and start a new path, and it changes everything. And so the event that took place, the event didn't change, but your perception of it changed, and therefore the impacts of that event changed as well. This is also why many healers will talk about working with clients and they resolve an issue that has been in their lineage, and they say that it'll change 7 generations back, but it'll also change 7 generations ahead in the future. And this is all coming from that now reality. Very difficult to explain, but I hope that you can understand when you get into those aspects of your life that make you happy, ridiculously happy, over bubbling with joy, or feeling such deep love and compassion, that is touching into those multi-dimensional aspects of what the now reality is. I hope I'm making sense, because this is a very complex subject.
We started on the advanced track with the conversation.
Yeah, we did.
And when it comes to being in the now, we have infinite choices that we can make in the now moment.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are seeing the world through a linear dimensional perspective, how does our perception of free will shift? Because it almost seems like when we tune into our multidimensionality, free will kind of starts changing a little bit. It becomes a little bit more expansive, more possibilities. It almost feels like most of the world is seeing that they can only choose from their linear self, from what they've done in the past and their predictable future. So when we play around with free will, how would you guys begin to sort of unwrap that?
Well, if you take a look at, are you talking about free will for the individual or free will for humanity? It's a little bit different. Humanity has free will to do anything it wants to do, and you're watching it, but mostly it is on a linear track, and you're right. And the choices are not very good at the moment. And it's either one or the other, but we're used to this. And this is what we grow up with. What if you yourself had the free will to drop into your heart, to go into this place of your soul, and actually project that which is perhaps what we have called compassionate action? I have free will to move into the field all of these beautiful things so that they might be captured by somebody else and revealed by somebody else and seen by somebody else. It's the field. If you don't know what that is, there's a great book with Lynn McTaggart has explained it. It's physical, it's real. It's a consciousness soup that's all around you that also explains intuition and numbers of things. Well, it's multidimensional and you can tap into it. What if your free will now includes you as perhaps a lighthouse in that free will area where you can show your light and it spills into the field, into the room you're in, and your free will says, I'm going to change all of these things to be more joyful. I'm going to send energy over here. I'm going to send it to the past, to the present. That's my free will. But I am a powerful being. I always was, and I've discovered that my free will, like a lighthouse, can influence others, and they may make choices because they see a light they didn't see before. Again, here we are with a complex answer. It's not a simple question, but that's how I see free will. A tremendous expansion of not just you controlling you, but you choosing to send light to other places and in ways you didn't think you could, which might be seen and then affects others' free will. It doesn't change them, but affects what they might do based upon what you're showing them.
Mm.
I also love that Kryon gave a metaphor about the recalibration of free choice. Because we're in this shift of consciousness, new tools and gifts are coming to enhance us that are going to take us on the path of graduate ascension, where all of us become masters of love. And part of this recalibration of free choice, free will, Kryon gave a wonderful metaphor. As you said, Emilio, most people are in linear choices. And when you're in black and white linear choices, you only have really option A and option B. When you walk into a store, this is what Kryon says, and you look on the shelf and there's only one jar, that's the choice you have. You can purchase that one jar or you cannot purchase that one jar. Once you start understanding that the core essence of you is way beyond this physical body, your soul is everywhere. You are bigger than anything you've ever been told. Once you start understanding and cognizing that for yourself, when you walk into the shop, all of a sudden there's maybe 5 or 6 jars before you to choose from, because you are now accessing the other aspects of yourself that have always been there. And one of those jars, it might be mastery. And when you start putting on and opening up that jar and accessing the mastery component of you, all of a sudden those linear options that you see, as Lee just said, you can send benevolent energy for those you see who are in trouble. And because consciousness is energy, it can change physics. So you can also use that to send benevolence ahead of you. You expect benevolence so that when you arrive a week in the future, there's going to be a benevolent outcome unfold for you. You can also access all of these other tools, including your biology, because you are able to create your reality from your consciousness, your intent, and your belief. You are in control of all of it. And this is what Kryon's teaching has been. You are in control of your biology. You are in control of the reality you create. This is the design of the divine human being. And humanity as a collective, we are in control of how fast we move through the shift. The more we can cognize that we are powerful beyond belief and that we can actually steer and direct our consciousness, and that these energies of laughter, joy, compassion, they have a cascading effect, so that the more of us can love on each other, support each other, be kind, have kindness with each other, the more that starts to spill out to all individuals. So the illumination of one spreads to the many. And as each person is own self being illuminated, they then go on to spark the illumination of others. And this is why collectively Kryon says light is winning. The darkness doesn't have a chance, despite what you might see on the news or by those who are invested in trying to keep it as the status quo. They don't have a chance. If you build a sandcastle on a beach and the tide starts rising, the sandcastle doesn't have a chance, because when that tide comes in, it's going to be overtaken by the tides. So our planet is going to be overtaken by the light.
And Monika, you mentioned these new tools that are emerging for us. And, we could talk about the external technological tools that are emerging, things like AI. But before that, I would like to start off with the inner technology, the inner tools that are emerging as well. In 1989, just to preface that, Kryon came through with a message that the magnetic grids of the planet were changing and that consciousness was a big factor in influencing these magnetic grids. I read that Kryon was saying that the magnetic grid shifted to allow that which is starting to pour through the veil to get right through your pineal gland. And that's when I think of the pineal gland, it's been depicted in ancient art of people with halos on their head, this illumination. How is the pineal gland shifting right now as we're beginning to tune into this inner technology and these biological upgrades that we're seeing for humanity right now?
You've opened up another, I would say, area that has multiple facets that might be confusing to people. One was the magnetic grid, and the second one then is the pineal. Let's start with the pineal, because that, as you mentioned, has been seen through history as the window to the soul. Now, we're not talking about the gland and the chemistry of that. We're talking about the multidimensional aspects of it. We are multidimensional beings. The pineal is seen as the place, right or wrong, but it's all through history, where spirit enters in some way, at some level, your body. We also know that people who had their pineal removed get the same thing. So it's not about the chemistry or the organ. It's more about what it means, but it's there for a reason. Lines up, of course, with the Bindi mark and all the India people. They see it as well. What Kryon has said about it is this, is that we believe that there is something called a veil. And you've heard this. Beyond the veil here, this is on the other side of the veil. Someone passes, they're on the other side of the veil. Angelic energy comes from that place. And then you get what Kryon has said, the veil is starting to diminish. It's starting to lift. Now then, Kryon has said just recently, by the way, the veil has always been inside you. So now we get a whole nother premise that we won't go into right now, and that's the enhancement, literally, of the human being. But if it's so that the veil is lifting in that linearity that you see what the veil might be, that means that more of the soul energy, divine energy, God energy, whatever you want to say, is starting to pour through the pineal. And in that, you get an enhancement of many things, including what some have called the higher self. If the higher self was always that part of you which was divine and always active, you'd see more of it being used. You have to have it. It's combined with everything else. So this enhancement of what's coming into the pineal also expands that which is your own divinity. What does that mean in your consciousness? It means you're starting to become more attuned to the elements of mastery, for instance. You're starting to see tools you never had that could create healing and peace and all these things that we talk about at a greater level than ever before. Now, people have trouble with this because you're told that everything's the same, history repeats itself and never gets any better or worse and just all static. That's not true. What we are seeing in this shift are remarkable changes, and that's just one. The other thing that Kryon mentioned in book one, and this was in 1993, after in 1989, I came in with Kryon and it was pretty well settled with what was going on. The first thing he said, I am a magnetic master. I had no idea what that meant, and that was his way of identifying that the subject was the magnetic grid of the earth. It's tied in with our consciousness. Now, I could go several ways here, but I'll just tell you that this is now been proven, and it took the 2001 experience to show it with Princeton University and the Global Consciousness Project to show absolutely that consciousness changes physics. So now we know that consciousness is energy. This is important because to most people, consciousness is this elusive thing. You know, can you bend a spoon with your mind and all of those kinds of things? And we say, well, they're parlor tricks and it's laughable, until Princeton showed, no, it is energy. So what are you going to do with that energy? Now Kryon comes in and says, I told you so. The magnetic grid is starting to shift and change. The center of the planet started to move a little different. That was news. Solar flares, that's news. All of it changes the magnetic grid of the earth through the heliosphere of the sun. That magnetic grid is starting to move and change to allow more things to flow in through the pineal to enhance the human being's choice. You have to know about this first, then you have to agree, say, is it possible? Then you say, okay, I'm going to give intent for it. Dear Spirit, I give intent to move beyond what I was told. Now, did you get that? Did you see what just happened there? I don't have to know what it is to get it. I don't have to know what it is or how it works to get it, any more than you have to know how the internal combustion engine works for you to drive your car. So you have a situation where literally you're saying, I want these new tools. Let them pour to me. If you're a healer watching this, I invite you to do that. You're going to watch new intuitive powers happen for your healing. It's guaranteed because you're giving intent for it. You deserve it. You came for it, and it's yours. But it doesn't just lay on us and happen automatically. This is what we're finding out. Cognize it, ask for it, take it, and wait for it. Watch it. It comes through intuition. The things that you never thought would work, the things that you never thought would try, new inventions. It's always coming with the free will of the human being who understands they're bigger than they were told, and we're starting to expand. Does that help to answer the question?
Yes, very deeply, very deeply. I'm getting chills because these are concepts that I've been playing around with very recently. So it's illuminating almost gaps in things that I was exploring into. Also would love to give the space to Monika to tell us your understanding of the pineal as well before we move on to the next question.
I think Lee gave a beautiful summary, which I want to move to another part that's internal, because you began by asking what are the internal upgrades that we're having inside. And Lee's explanation again of the pineal is brilliant. There is another component, though, outside of the pineal, and it has to do with our chromosomes. When Kryon first began giving the creation story for humanity, we were told that 200,000 years ago, there was a love plan by those who had gone through their own ascension came from the stars known as the Pleiades cluster. The Pleiadians came to birth humanity, and we were given a divine spark. Now, interestingly, in peer-reviewed science, Greg Braden, in his book Human by Design, which has been subsequently called The Science of Self-Empowerment, but the content of both books is the same. And in science, peer-reviewed science, they have discovered 200,000 years ago, the humanoids developing on the Earth had something that took place where there was a fusion of two chromosomes. And we went from a 24-pair chromosome humanoid to one Homo sapiens that contains 23 chromosomes. And when this took place, it gave us an enlarged brain. It gave us capacity for memory learning, emotion, empathy, compassion. That did not exist before this time. And here's where I want to add the next piece of information that has come from Kryon and has not been validated yet by science, but at some stage in the future it will. When the Pleiadian star mothers birthed the new humanity, we were actually given a 24th chromosome pair, which is multi-dimensional in nature. So it is not viewable by our equipment that we have currently. There will come a time, Kryon has said, that you will have what is called the quantum lens. And when it is placed on the human, you will see the macabre and all of the multi-dimensional pieces and parts of your DNA. And when you look across the galaxy, it's teeming with life. And we all have those same building blocks of the same DNA structure. So this 24th chromosome pair that is inside of you, which is multi-dimensional, what's it doing? Well, Kryon has said not much until the shift. Now that we have decided that we are definitely moving on this path of ascension, think of it like a time capsule that's been dormant in your system, waiting for the right time to release the information. What is that information that it's releasing? It's entangled with your soul energy. It contains the instructions for mastery. This is what will guide humanity. The blueprint for creation is within that 24th chromosome pair, and it will create alchemy for us, our lives, and for all of humanity. So these are the other tools that we have that are, and I don't even want to use this line, but coming online is kind of where it feels like it's going. So we have the technology within us that's going to advance us even beyond what any type of artificial technology or external technology will try to do.
Yeah. And if all of nature is just a reflection of ourselves, we look at the caterpillar that has the imaginal cells that let the whole ecosystem of the caterpillar know it's time for a metamorphosis, and it becomes a butterfly. And I feel like we, as you just mentioned, with that 24th chromosome and the pineal gland, these are things internally that we have that are just waiting for the right moment for us to evolve. And I think we're in this time now. And going back for a moment, there was a book written a long time ago called the New Testament. And within it, it had the book of Revelations. And in that, it mentioned this term Armageddon, which in my perspective, it's just a metaphorical prophecy of a battle between light and dark approaching the end times. And as you know, Monica was mentioning light and darkness in the beginning. I wanted to understand and help people understand what is the purpose of dark energy in the first place, and how is it closely linked to our own evolution as well and our own light.
That's not a hard one. It's not an energy that we that was placed here. It's an energy that consciousness created by itself. And this battle of dark and light that you talk about is very, very, I say, present in Cryon's work. And it's not energy, it's consciousness. So let's peg it for what it is. And I want to talk about it. The planet has evolved in consciousness very little for eons. This dark consciousness that we have and that has been here has been like a train around a tree, for instance, even a Christmas tree if you want to. It's in a circle. And it continues to be in a circle, which means it doesn't get any better. It simply runs over the same track. Low consciousness is what we've had for eons. And it's the kind of consciousness that you look back in history that's responsible for so many horrible things that have happened and doesn't get any better. It has to do with greed, war, all of the things that you look at it and is not you and you wish would go away and that we see everywhere even today. It didn't take much to get there. That's human consciousness. And never got any better because there was no reason. It didn't graduate. It didn't evolve. Kryon came in 1989 to tell us that the shift would occur, that this shift would happen in the years of the 2000s. And if you look at it, this then corresponds to, you mentioned it, revelation. Because how many of you went to church and heard that in the year 2000, there would be the rapture, the Armageddon, the whatever. In other words, something was going to happen. Well, would you be surprised if you had the same date range given to you by the indigenous? They are all over the planet, whether it was the Hopi Indian rock, whether it's the Mayan calendar, wherever we go, it's targeting these years of the 2000s. Something's going to happen. When we go back and look at all of this and relate it to this dark and light energy, what Kryon said was going to happen was as follows, is that train track of an unevolved evolution of consciousness would develop a siding if we didn't destroy ourselves, and we didn't. And that siding is a track that's going to go someplace it's never gone before. One of Greg Braden's books, I think it's called Fractal Time, explains this, and he says it also explains why time or history repeats itself. This is really important for everybody to understand and know, and that is history did repeat itself. I mean, between World War I and II, they just took a break and came back at it with the same players, the same reasons. We do this. We go through an area of peace, and we go right back to war. Repeated. Suddenly, we don't, and it isn't. We have a siding that we have taken in human consciousness, in the human future, that's going to a place we have never gone before. The old track is not gone, is gone. We're not going to go there. History will not repeat itself. Listen to me. It doesn't repeat itself because we are no longer on an old energy consciousness track. Instead, it's starting to raise. We're starting to care about life and compassion. We're starting to do things for each other we never did before. If you take a look at what's happened in the past, you can see this. I'm not going to go into it because I have before. But it's remarkable what has taken place. It's not your grandfather's world anymore. So this is now a new light, you might say, an energy which has a light component, divine component, compassion component. We are starting to raise up into a higher dimensional consciousness. Now, what's going on today, right now, is this. Listen, there are many who want that other consciousness to remain so that they can still have the greed factor they always had, so they could still be in control like they always were. There's a lot of money behind keeping the old energy just the way it was. I am convinced that even Putin's war was one of those efforts to keep us in an old energy of war. It was out of the blue, nobody expected it, and it's right out of the 50s. It's here again. And I believe that these are the kinds of things that are trying to drag us back from those who want to keep it old, because there's money to be made. There's all the control to be had, and they haven't got a chance. It's going to, I mean, look what happened when that war started. And I've said this before. I may have even said it on the last broadcast. Nobody cooperated. I'm thinking that Putin thought it would all snap back into the East-West pattern that we had in the 50s and 60s in the Cold War. It didn't. I mean, when Switzerland decides to take sides, you know things are different on this planet. This is what has happened. So the dark light battle is the battle between the old consciousness, your grandfather's world, and a new consciousness, your future, that is starting to happen right now. I hope I'm simplifying this so it doesn't seem like wars in heaven or anything strange. It is a battle between greed and all of these things and light and compassion. We are coming out of an old energy, and that's what you're sensing. That's why it's difficult. The battle rages for this.
I also remember that Emilio was asking a more challenging question in the beginning part of that, which was, why do we have the dark energy? I think that's what you said, or what's the purpose of it?
Well, what I was saying, what Kryon was saying, was that there was nothing, it didn't come from above. We developed it. The why is because it happened through our own creation.
But then when you go behind the why, it's almost like you start exploring the question, Emilio, what is the meaning of life, and what is the purpose, and why are we here? I mean,
it gets deeper.
That's where it gets into that deepness.
The rabbit hole.
And it's a very good question, and it's a very good discovery that we're trying to make. And I remember talking about this with Lee. What is the purpose of this? Why do we have to even have that scenario in the first place to have that battle of dark and light? And the answer we got from Kryon was more along the lines of, it's very difficult for us to understand, but in the most simplest terms, the Creator is biased in love. And the only way you can have a test of where energy will go is to have a test that is not biased with the bias of the Creator. And so one by one, there are planets within the galaxy that are given a piece of the Creator, but it's hidden, so that you have to discover that you have that Creator energy inside with free choice in a love test that is not biased. And one by one, there have been planets that have indeed made that discovery, and they've gone on to see the next planet. And what Kryon tells us is that it changes the fabric of the entire universe in ways that we don't even understand. It's like trying to explain the internet to a culture that existed 500 years ago. They have no way of understanding what that is. But what we are doing is so beautiful. It is seen by those galactic ancestors that have been through this exact pivotal point in life. And that is why there is so much celebration from those who see us, know us, entangled with us at that quantum level. And that's the best I can do to explain why it might be unfolding in the first place.
And from Kryon's perspective, what does it mean to be a human in 2025 and the years to come? Because it almost feels like our definition of who we are has to change with all of these shifts that we're talking about, that other people are talking about. So what does it really mean to be a human during these times?
These are the questions being asked even in Greg Braden's new book, and we are becoming something that we were not before. And that is going to be eventually an evolution that you can measure and you can see, and all of this, where the human starts to have mastery, mastery over physics, mastery of all of the things that we are looking at and thinking are linear become non-linear. It's a new human being, and that's because we are no longer in that train track anymore. So you can start listing the kinds of things, but expect kindness, expect wisdom, expect no more war. That I think that is one of the tests of humanity. It's always had war. You'll have disagreements, but now we're going to kill each other. And that's going to be the new human. And that may have to happen for a couple of generations before people say, wow, there's a big difference here. We're actually cooperating with each other and we're trading, and we're always happy with each other, but we don't kill each other anymore. Then that gets into the culture where you don't have as many people in jail. And then slowly you see the human being has changed. And the consciousness of that which you used to call the human being is so different that what Kryon is saying is that someday you'll look back on your own history, and say those were the barbaric days. And you'll understand we really are different. We really are changing. One of the Kryon books was called The New Human. So you can see that what you have asked is very much here, alive, being worked with and examined.
Beautiful.
And the last time we spoke, we were talking about it being the year of recovery. And there has been several years of recovery. And I want to premise what that even means. It's a recovery from an old dark energy moving into one of light. And there's a period, Kryon says, that when you go through a major transition, or you've had a major surgery, or you've had something major disruptive in your life, and you get through that hurdle, there is a period of recovery, almost an adjustment period. And this year of 2025 is where Kryon coined a phrase where it's the year of emergence. And I love what that concept invokes about where we as humanity and individuals stand. When you've been in that period of recovery from what you've gone through, and then you stand on the threshold and you open a door and you emerge into what you are becoming. And part of this year of emergence, Kryon pulls it back to something that Lee delivered in 1999 when he released a book through Hay House, and it became a #1 bestseller, translated into 27 countries, and it was called The Indigo Children. Part of this year of emergence is that those indigo children are also emerging as adults now. As children, they had to witness dysfunction all around them, and they were not in a position where they could make effective change. But as adults, they're able to see the dysfunction that's around them and start to begin to make effective change. So, Amelia, you are an indigo, and what you are doing is wanting to reach out to others so that they have the option of seeing new perspectives and discoveries about themselves that they didn't even know about. But there's indigos in every aspect, whether it's in the government, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in the spiritual systems. These indigos are now looking at all the things that smack of old energy and are dysfunctional, and are starting to put together solutions that will push us into an area where we have new values, new ways of doing business, new ways of honoring and recognizing each individual and the contribution they have to make.
So if I could just continue, if we've said this before, I just want to be personal and let everybody know this podcast, the very existence of it, I'm old enough to remember where this would be impossible. I'm not talking about the technology. Even if the technology existed 20, 25, 30 years ago, you wouldn't have young people coming on and talking about metaphysics. They would be laughed off the stage. Nobody would be interested. You have a popular show because you're talking about things that are pushing the envelope of reality. And that is twigging so many memories with so many other young people and adults to tune in and see what you've got to say. This is new. This is part of the new human. You are a new human. The people who are tuning in have that, I would say, attribute as well. That never would have been interesting. It is now. That ought to tell you everything in a nutshell. Just stop and look at your program. Why? What has happened? Who is watching? Why are they watching? Is this new? Yes. And this is what we can point at to say you are experiencing it, you're living it. I think it's your legacy to be here as a forerunner. You're going to see more and more of this in this particular way of podcasting. But who knew that this would be popular and these things would actually be watched? Remember, at my history and my age and all the things, I watched the opposite. I was here to watch people make fun of everything Kryon said, to look the other way, to, tell their kids to burn their books because it was a cult. I've seen it all. Now turn the page and look what's going on. And you'll go, you have to see that. You have to believe me. This is special. This is new. And this is what we've been waiting for.
And I absolutely love that Kryon is calling this year the year of emergence, because that's also a concept in biology. And I'm looking here, and what is an emergent in biology? It's when smaller parts combine to make increasingly complex systems. An emergent property is a characteristic an entity gains when it becomes part of a bigger system. So it's almost like we're now, as a collective, getting, before we were separate, we were wholeness in little parts. We were all, divided from each other. And now it's like a flock of birds moving in one direction. And when it says bigger system, I'm thinking galactical system. So when we become emergent in our species, we enter the bigger system of the galaxy, which is other dimensional beings, other entities. What can you tell us about where we're headed in that realm as well?
We are going to meet the family eventually. This has been the subject of many channelers, and it's starting to come to fruition. It's almost time that the rest of the galaxy, or a part of it, or a piece of it, will start to show itself to us. This is going to be an emerging like a butterfly out of a cocoon when finally we realize we're not alone. And it will come and it will not frighten the earth. It's going to be something that it's going to accept and see. It's going to be the way of it. And when we understand that, we're going to start to ask a whole lot of questions. Who are you? What you've been through? What do you have for us? What do you say to us? There's just going to be so many questions there. And some of them are going to be spiritual. Do you believe in a God? What has happened? And then we realize, maybe it's all tied into that energy, which is of the divine source, the creator. What if we meet other planets, and we will, and Kryon has said we will, who are so far ahead of us by 1 million years or so, actually have ascended planets, come here and have been coming here all along without ships, We think they're angels, and because how could that happen? In linearity, we put skin and wings on them and put halos on them and paint them. What if they weren't angels at all? What if they were from other planets in an ascended way? We don't know what we don't know. And we have to then stop rolling our eyes with some of these things and say, what if? So just level the playing field. We don't know what we don't know, and say, dear Spirit, show us that which we don't know in a way that we can be comfortable with it and work with it. So we are emerging, I believe, into a time where this is going to happen sooner than not, that we are going to hear from the family. So it's going to happen, I would say, in a way that is not going to be full at first. It's going to be partial, just to warm us up. We'll meet some, and then later we'll meet the biggies. So this is where I think we're going. I think this is the biggest thing that we can say as humanity on this earth that's going to happen to us, that's never happened before in our history, and will change everything.
I think it's also potentially one of those things where if you look in your own life, there's often a defining moment where everything changes and you begin to ask the questions that brought you to even listen to this podcast or to even create this podcast. There were questions we had, we didn't know everything, and then all of a sudden a bigger picture is shown to us that makes us throw out the question, what else is there that I don't know or understand? Whereas often we get in our belief system, we believe what we believe, we have that whole consensus reality of our truth, and there is nothing that will ever change that truth. For example, once upon a time, there were those invested that the world is flat and that if you sailed your ship, you would eventually fall off the edge. And the idea that the earth is round was preposterous. It couldn't possibly be so. So much so that Galileo was under house arrest for even suggesting such a thing could ever exist. So when you are presented with evidence you can no longer deny, it brings about a shift in perception and an exploration of, oh my gosh, what else is there I don't know? So potentially I feel we will have some contact in a way that will be a catalyst for us to think, oh my gosh, this really is a reality that many believe is either possible, but I doubt it, or no, it can't be, we're the only ones here. Once you expand that out of the box, it's like the toothpaste out of the toothpaste tube. You can't put it back in. You can't unknow. There's no delete key in the brain. The timing of it, as Lee said, it may be incremental, where we get some ET visitations before we get the beautiful soul family coming to visit. Right now, Kryon has said, we're a little dangerous because as humanity, we have the idea of war and fear, and if anything came that might threaten us, the idea would be to try and destroy it rather than greet it. So this, when I feel we can move past this and be receptive to receiving our family, I think that's when things will start happening and it will be undeniable.
And it's already becoming a little bit undeniable for some people that are having their own experiences.
Yes.
And, you know, I've told this story before, leaving the Great Pyramid when I was in Egypt in September and seeing an aircraft just fly over, making no sound. It was just hovering there in the shape of a triangle without the base, all black, lights in the bottom. I was like, what is going on? And then that's just evidence. And when I hear more people have these experiences, and when I interview people that have had contact experiences, it's like, that's really all the evidence we need is our own experience of reality. Because if this reality is a hologram, a projection of our consciousness, then all we need is confirmation from ourselves, and not waiting on a government to tell us this is the truth. We already know the truth by the way that it feels. And moving on to the same intelligence, we're talking about galactic intelligence. Now moving on to artificial intelligence. I was wondering why Kryon was advising mathematicians to build AI on a base 12 system rather than a base 10 system.
I could spend a long time. I'm just going to tell you that base 12 is the way of the universe. We slipped into 10s a long time ago. It's not an elegant system. It doesn't have near the robustness of a 12. But the biggest thing is everywhere we look, there are 12s everywhere. And I don't know if you're looking at the 360 degrees of the compass or music and half steps or the octaves. It's in DNA and 4 base pairs. You go on and on and on, even to, and it's fun to tell you this, that in the days when you were putting chips in your cameras instead of carrying around phones and take photographs, if you take the chips out, they're all divisible by 4. The numbers are all divisible by 4. That is a natural state of where physics falls when they developed memory chips. So everything points to base 12. Now, you were recently in Egypt. You probably are aware they were completely base 12. They counted differently. They counted the knuckles on their hands, whatever. It's very, very much so were the Sumerians. So we have had societies that were base 12, and they lost it. They lost it because they were conquered by societies that were 10s. We went on this 10 track because it was too easy. We got 10 fingers, 10 toes, 5, 10, 15, 20. You count like this. 12 is an elegant language. It's not a mathematical system. 12 is a language that will reveal things within itself that we have no idea about, that 10s don't reveal. You can start studying it if you want to. But this is what some are very interested in because they understand that physics and chemistry and all these things will absolutely explode when you get to that which is base 12. Now, why don't we just try it ourselves? No one has been successful. We keep slipping back into decimal places and thinking in 10s. What it's going to take is a computer that has no bias. And AI, and we could go into this, Kryon is actually more of a futurist. He says once we get past the silly parts of AI and the parts where they're going to have to be litigated and all that and understand what it really does, it's going to create cures for cancer, cures for other things, longer life, because it can see patterns in things. It can take thousands and thousands of experiments from around the world, cobble them together, look at patterns, and instantly see what would take us years to see when it comes to disease. Also, if in the base 12 area, we're not talking about a thinking computer, an intelligent thing that's going to hurt us and kill us like in Terminator. We're just talking about math. A mathematical scenario, base 12 computers that are enormous and big will reveal things to us we never knew because it speaks the language of the universe. Physics in the universe is all 12s. You get these little pokes because in history you look at the spiritual systems or the other systems that are royal systems. They're always in 12s, whether it's the 12 apostles or the knights of the round or whatever. 12, 12, 12. That's like a hint from spirit. Hey, you're on the wrong track, folks. You're on 10s. And this is why Kryon has said, you're going to get to a place where you're going to build that computer and you'll never look back, because this will then put you in space. He said you won't go to the stars without it.
And then the other beautiful part of Kryon sharing information about base 12, it's a philosophy. Kryon says.
Mm-hmm.
It's a language. Don't look at it necessarily as a mathematical formula, because it is so much more than that. So when you start thinking in terms of a philosophy, really? Yes. A language? Really? Yes. And when we move into the future, there will be children that come in with the understanding they will already know base 12 as a language and a philosophy. What do you think that might do to a planet when you have children being born with full and complete understanding of base 12 as a philosophy and a language?
Let me show you how outrageous this is. I'm going to give you a fact now. It'll get letters and the whole routine. When base 12 comes online and starts working with all of that we know, remember time is also 12. And base 12, divisible by 2, 4, 6, 8, all of these things, divisible mainly by 4s and 3s. But here's what I'm going to tell you. The value of this wonderful number that we're using everywhere in math called pi will be revealed to be 4. Now, let the laughter begin, because all those mathematicians watching this or anybody say, wait a minute, it's a ratio. It's always going to be the same no matter what math you use. No, it isn't. And this is why we're saying that base 12 is going to reveal the philosophy of a mathematics which changes everything, even the value that is the ratio which we call pi. Do you really think, and just back up for a moment, do you really think that ratio, which is so used in physics and is everywhere you look, in the circle and the diameter and all that, would be an irrational number that doesn't even have an end? And how can you work with that? And the answer is, it doesn't. Something's wrong. So this is why we're saying we don't know what we don't know yet. But Kryon has said it's not another math system. It's a philosophy and a language.
Yeah. And it's like we can't marry ourselves to the formulas of the old consciousness, because as our consciousness expands, more we will uncover about physics, math, astronomy, the nature of the universe. So I think we're going to be heading into some years of major discoveries, and it's almost happening every day where something new is coming to the surface. I was wondering if we could go into an interesting segment that came to mind where, and if this isn't okay, we could just cut this out. But when it comes to Monika being you've been coined the Kryon archives, and you have all of this accumulation of what Kryon has taught over the years, I would love to understand, what is a question that you're urging to ask Kryon right now? And if Lee, you feel open to joining us in a channeling session with Kryon and just allowing you two to flow with that, I would love to hold space for that if it's a possibility.
I can channel for you. It's not a thing where she joins in to that, so you can.
I think it was just postulating a question for Kryon to answer.
Sure. Do you have a question for Kryon?
The Kryons trained me into always asking Kryon, tell me what it is I need to know. So let me posture this on the behalf of humanity who are in the year of the emergence of 2025. What is it at this point, Kryon, that humanity needs to know?
So is it all right with you if we go into channel now for just a little while?
100%.
All right. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. Not all believe in these kinds of things, that a human being could drop into some kind of energy and actually communicate beyond the veil. I came in 36 years ago and I told my partner, I'm not from here. I've never been a human being. That I represent a divine energy that is also his. The message was this, that all humanity right now has a piece of the Creator within them. I'll use your terminology, a piece of God inside. If that is so, and you will believe that is so, is there a way of letting some of that knowledge, wisdom, mastery, beauty emerge within you? I will say this yet again. You've come in like a block of granite, not understanding that within that block of granite there is a beautiful piece of art. And all you have to do is to chip away what doesn't belong. What's left after you chip away what doesn't belong is mastery in the human being, beauty, love, and compassion. Here is something I want to make clear. No matter how far you get in the inventions of physics, no matter how much you think you know about the way the universe works, you cannot ignore the spiritual component of it. It's the glue that gives you the intuition to get where you're going. Love is the basis of everything in this universe. Made in love, you were made in love. Yet there are those who want to proceed as though it doesn't exist and everything is simply numbers. You'll be disappointed if you go there. You have to involve the idea that you are loved beyond measure, there's a reason for your life, and that you're here on purpose. If some of you are disturbed with the way the earth is going, or the way perhaps you are going within even your country or your city, and it keeps you awake at night, I want you to know something. This is humanity chipping away at the block. And it's been what is being revealed things that you didn't expect. This is a time right now of confusion for many. Could you raise above that? Or if some say, rise above that. And if you do, how? And the answer is this. You put the spiritual component, the idea that maybe, just maybe, you're here on purpose. Not to suffer, not to worry, not to be concerned, but to blossom and emerge into that which is compassionate action. Can you reframe the worry and say, this is temporary. Here it is on schedule, just like I was told it would be. It looks ugly to me. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm worried about it. But I'm going to reframe that. I'm going to convert all of that to something else. The statue inside me that is now starting to emerge in mastery that can overcome it through love. You might even say, dear Spirit, help me to convert all of my worry instead into peacefulness. If you start this dialogue, dear ones, you're speaking with the divinity in your own cellular structure, your own mind, your own synapse, your own chemistry. That's where the worry is coming from. And you start to understand you are changing yourself. You're not reaching into the sky and pleading for God to change anything. You've discovered you have divinity inside. This is the new human, the one who understands that all is inside that ever could be, the one that will give you curing diseases, the one that will give you longer life, but right now, the one that will give you peacefulness and the ability to sleep at night, and the wisdom to know what consensus reality is. That is, what is the programming, or what is that truth? The truth that you are bigger than you were told. You can think for yourself, use intuition, and be peaceful the whole time. This is the battle of dark and light. Welcome to it. You are here. Which side are you going to take? And if you say, I want to take the light side, well, then you're going to have to move through a time of difficulty where you don't worry and you don't fear. Welcome to the study of mastery. It's here for you. What if this is why you were here? What if watching this program was to have it tweak a little thing, perhaps in your brain, that said, I've heard this before. I want to know more about this. What if it was true? It's why I love humanity the way I do, the why I continue to come, because so many of you old souls watching this are starting to awaken to a larger truth, not only of who you might be, but what you came for. Compassion and love are the tools of the day. They will lead to greater intuition, higher inventions, and eventually to meet the family, the ones that have your DNA. And so it is.
And so it is. Thank you both for participating in that and being open to it. I really, really appreciate it. Beautiful.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
We won't let a year and a half go by until the next one. I can assure you of that. And we're going to be doing some more collaborations in the very near future, which we'll just tease for now. But
yeah.
We end every show with a segment called the Final Trio, which are just little rapid fire questions that we ask at the end. Mm-hmm. But before that, where would you send people to connect with both of you, Kryon, the beautiful work that is surrounding this message? Where would you send people to connect with your work?
It's a website. It's cryonmasters.com, and we are starting to grow it and change it and all the things. You'll find out also we're starting to do more live events. We're getting back to that, maybe one a month or so, where we come to various cities first in the States. We'll be in Australia next month. But it's cryonmasters.com. That's it's actually Australia this month.
Yes.
It depends upon when this is aired.
What is time? What is time?
What is time anyway? So
yeah. The other timeline.
The other timeline. Cryonmasters.com. Go there. Yes. Everything is there.
Beautiful. We'll put that all in the show notes and the links where people can go find that. And for the first question, it's for both of you. So whoever wants to start, but what has been the most unexpected lesson, keyword unexpected, that you have learned from traveling around the world with Kryon's energy and message?
For me, it's that we have the ability to touch the field and intuitively actually see what's going on around us. It's freaky. It's almost like telling the future. And that's the most interdimensional thing you can have. We've had it happen a couple of times recently. We may even write a book about it someday.
I think the one that's most unexpected is just how much you have people that come together on our events, never having met each other before, but there is this instant heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul connection. There's this love wash. Yeah, I've even seen it change the guides that are traveling with us. Who is this group? Who are these people? And it's an indication to me of if this is what it's like in the human plane, I can't even imagine how much love is going to come through to us when we go back home, when we've finished with our temporary visit to Earth. It's like a prelude of how much more amazing it is when we go back into the fold of our angelic soul self.
It's almost like Dr. Joe is teaching in this advanced retreat. He's saying when you're in the quantum, when you're in the void, the thought that you have in the void becomes the experience instantaneously. Here in third dimensional reality, we have a thought, but we have to move through space and time to get there. So when we're in that void, when we're past the veil, asking the question, is there more love, becomes the experience. So there's always more love to give. And we're always influencing the field, as you said, Lee. And Kryon has been talking so much about mastery throughout, we've sprinkled it out throughout the whole episode. So I'm curious to know, for both of you, when you look back at your life, what would you have liked to master at the end of it?
You're looking back in my life and asking what I want to master as the end of my life?
Yeah.
When you get to the end and you look back, what would you have wanted to master in this life?
Time.
We're just playing with time now.
I'll tell you, no, the truth is this. And I've said to Kryon, why did you show up when I was 45 instead of 35? And if I had had this earlier, it would have changed so many things I would have done. Now I know it happens like it happens, but you ask, and that's what I would have done. At the end of my life, looking back, that's the question I would have said. I'm very pleased with where I am. I just wanted it sooner.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think the 3D Monika, what she would have loved to master is the ability to speak and understand every language on the planet. I think
how many are there?
I know, right? I mean, I have English, kind of, depending on who you ask. I was born to Hungarian parents, so I grew up speaking Hungarian, and that's my native language, but it's very rusty now because I don't speak it much. And then I wanted to learn Spanish because it's such a beautiful language. I even lived in South America for a while to immerse myself into learning that language. But for me, learning languages opens you up to the different culture, because phrases that you say in one culture, it's conceptual, and you actually use different parts of your brain, I think, when you start learning and understanding different languages and the different cultures. And when you start traveling, you really get out of the little programmed box that you grew up in, saying, this is good, this is bad, I like this, I don't like that. When you travel and you immerse into all those other cultures and languages, it opens up so much, and you realize more about what you have in common than what you don't have in common. And really, I think the key to mastering all of those languages is having a really good understanding of the third language that Kryon talks about. And the third language is the language of love. So I think for me, the mastery is how can I get better at being in the language of love, so that no matter who I'm with and the conversations we have, we always have that present.
And to tie both of your answers together, there's a movie called The Arrival, which I don't want to give too much away, but basically there's a visitation of a huge extraterrestrial ship. And then all these scientists go in and they're like, okay, what is this? Like, we need to explore. And the beings that, own this ship, that were on this ship, they were presenting symbols to the scientists, the linguists, and the linguists were trying to understand what these symbols meant. And it was their language. And at the end of the movie, when they're able to crack the meaning of those symbols, they were able to travel through time, past, present, and future. So language itself can help us time travel. And I think that movie perfectly depicted what both of you were saying. And that's a possibility for all of us, is to master that language so that we can travel through time.
Absolutely.
It gets complex,
does.
It's a great movie. It's so complex. Some people walk out and I didn't understand that at all.
We loved that movie because of everything it represented.
Beautiful. And for the last question of today, it was, if Kryon's message was to be discovered by an advanced civilization 10,000 years from now, what truth would you want them to know about humanity's journey?
What they would, if they could discover Kryon's messages, and 10,000 years from now, first of all, they would see that everything Kryon has said is true and has come about. So they would say, you had a prophet and you didn't know it. That's one of the things they would say. And they would also say, there's other things we have to learn from what Kryon has said as well. Because what Kryon talks about is not just the human future, it's the galactic future, it's the universal future. It's a bigger truth that comes from a divine source. So they would also be looking at it from that way. I've known that for a very long time, just waiting for many of these things to develop into the reality that people have said was not going to happen, and that it did. So I'm very pleased with so far, and I feel comfortable with what Kryon is saying about what's next. And I believe that 10,000 years, they would look back and go, yep, that's what happened.
And I would like to think that they would look at what Kryon has been saying and is saying and will say and go, oh, wow, how beautiful. These are messages from home.
Mm-hmm.
These are messages from the family. I understand.
Wow. Beautiful. Lee, Monika, and Kryon, thank you for walking us back home in this beautiful conversation, for making it so both logical and poetic and just sprinkled with metaphor. It's been such a gift to hold space for both of you, and I look forward to creating more and more and more beautiful projects together. And I think it's just the beginning of something beautiful that we can all create. And thank you for everyone tuning in. Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Love and blessings.